us here, I would love to know who's in the room. Um, I will start by introducing myself. I'm Katie Murray. I'm the director of the Orange County Arts Commission. We are the Arts Council for Orange County. We're the partner with the State Arts Council, which is what makes this funding available that I'm here to talk about today. So I'm just going to call on y'all. I know some of you, but just so that the rest of the group can meet you as well. Let's start with Lynn. Muted. You're muted.
How's that?
Good.
Not enough coffee. Good morning. I'm with the Chapel Hill Carborough Public School Foundation, and I work on writing grants for schools in Chapel Hill and Carborough.
Awesome. Corey.
Hi, my name is Corey Gallimore. Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, I am a volunteer for the McDougall Elementary and McDougall Middle School PTAs, and I work on writing grants to help bring different programs into those schools.
Awesome. Eric Valera.
Hi, my name is Eric Valera. I'm a visual artist in Chapel Hill.
Clint Lloyd.
Hi, my name is actually Lena Lindberg. I'm trying to figure out Microsoft Teams. I can't even figure out how to change the name, but my name is Lena, and I am a contract grant writer. So I'm here to take some notes for our
Great.
clients. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, and Teams is the worst, but it's also cheap, and that's why that's what we have for the county. So here we are. Miguel.
Hi, I'm Miguel Rojas Sotelo. I'm director of the North Carolina Latin American Film Festival and also work with El Centro for the Nuevo South and Artist Studio Project. We produce all sorts of cultural programming for schools and communities around, and I'm also a professor at Duke University.
Wow, you're busy. All right. Mel Huey.
And getting funding, looking for funding.
Yes. Clearly, I mean, yes. Mel.
Hi, I'm Mel Huey. I'm president of the board of Voices Chapel Hill. We are a large community chorus here in Chapel Hill, and we produce 2 major shows a year and sometimes a show in the summer as well.
Awesome. Shady.
Good morning. My name is Shady Kimsey. I am an artist in residence at the Carborough Arts Center, and I have been partnered with them for the last few years to put on a monthly program that's open to the community called Bad Art Club. And so I'm here kind of for my own organization, which is an organization of one, partnered with a lot of amazing local artists, and also as a co-writer with the Arts Center because I do a lot of my work there and in partnership with them. So thank you, Katie.
Yeah, glad to have you here. And then last but not least, Rachel.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. I am Rachel Jessen. I am operations and outreach coordinator at Photo Farm down in Chapel Hill. Yeah, we're a pretty new place. Past couple years we've been up and running. It's just me and our founder director Phyllis Dooney. Yeah, so I'm really unfortunately I'm at my day job, so I won't, I'll be sort of probably listening more than really participating. But yeah, I just wanted to see what this was all about.
Awesome. Well, we are glad to have you here. I need to get down there and check out Photo Farm. I've heard so many wonderful things.
Yeah.
Y'all are definitely an asset to the community. So we are happy to have you here. I am gonna get started. When I'm sharing my screen, I can't really see you all. So if you don't mind, if you have notes, or if you have questions, note them And then we'll leave time at the end for questions and answers, but also, this is my 10th year doing this. We've got a lot of FAQs at the end of the presentation that are, the most often questions that we get. So I also suspect if you have questions, they're probably going to be answered, but there's always other questions that, are new, especially if you're a new applicant. So just note them and hold until the end, and then we will open it up. Okay. So let me share my screen. Can everybody see that okay? Okay. All right, so just to be clear, this training right now is for the Grassroots Arts Program, and that is for organizations, municipalities, schools. We do have a different program called the Artist Project Grant. That training is tonight at 6. So if you're here representing an organization, you're in the right place. Or this is also helpful information no matter which program you're applying to. So you're welcome to stay even if you're more focused on the Artist Project Grant. Excuse me. So we do, like I just said, we have 2 annual grant programs. Grassroots, that is funded mainly by the state. Through our partnership, we are, the State Arts Council has county partners in all 100 counties to administer grassroots money. It is a extremely effective statewide program. It's replicated by other states around the country. It is the way that we get state funding into every single county, even the most rural. So, when we go to Arts Day every year in Raleigh, this is what we're advocating for because it's an extremely important program. Our funding has increased significantly over the last few years, and I credit that to the work of all of us advocates, but Arts North Carolina. So plug for Arts NC. If you are not a member, either an individual member or your organization, please do so. It's based on budget size, so it's affordable. They are I can't even put into words how critically important that organization is. So please support them. The more support they have, the more they can support us. And then the Artist Project Grant, those are grants that are out in the community, but led by artists. So I do have an asterisk here this year. Some of y'all might have heard in these last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of budget issues. This is not unique to Orange County. Everybody's having budget issues right now. Whenever federal cuts are happening and human services are being increased by local governments, it causes a lot of pressure on county and municipal budgets, in addition to just a slowing economy and all the other issues we're having right now. So the Arts Commission has been facing some cuts. One of the cuts that has been up has been the $30,000 that the county contributes to the Grassroots program. I think it's going to be safe, but I am not going to know for certain until the budget passes on June 16th. So that is why I've got an asterisk there. And I'll talk more in a minute about what that actually means. And if somebody, let's see. Oh, here we go. Admit. Okay. All right. So that being said, our total amount we have available this year is just shy of $107,000. There's a big difference this year. In the past, the state would not allow us to grant state funding to individual artists, and they have done away with that rule, which I wholeheartedly support. And what that means is that we are combining now all the money available. So the county for many years, has always allocated just shy of $29,000 for artist grants. A few years back, they started allocating this $30,000 for the organizations. That was a result of them taking arts agencies out of the outside agency program of the county and having arts agencies apply through an arts agency granting organization. Because in the past, you had to apply through the outside agencies program, which is really designed for human services. And it was like a round peg, square hole situation. So, we moved the arts out, they allocated money. Now that money might be cut. Not a great scenario, but hopefully we're going to squeak through this year. So, our pool is larger, but it also includes the artist grants too. So I'll talk more about that in a minute. The maximum request limits this year, excuse me, are the same as the last few years. Programmatic requests, you can ask for up to 5,000, and operations requests, you can also ask for up to 5,000. Not huge amounts, but helpful nonetheless. Timeline. So projects have to take place between July 1st of this year, June 30 of next year. So that means, if you're not finding out until August, if you got a grant, in theory, if your project's happening in July, you might be getting a grant after the fact and reimbursing yourself. And that is entirely okay. It's just the way timing works. So the due date is Tuesday, June 30th, 11:59 p.m. We will get notifications out in August. Our panels happen throughout July. And then we hope to disperse the funding in September. And then September or October, most likely October, we will all go before the county commissioners and have a photo opportunity and brag on y'all that get grants. Last year, those of y'all who were grantees last year will know that our timeline got really messed up due to changes trickling from the federal level down to the state level, down to the local level. It caused a lot of delays. And I'm hoping that we sorted that all out last year so that does not happen again. But it's just important to keep in mind that because this is state funding, sometimes there are things that happen that are outside of our control. So, but we try to get you your money as soon as we can. So eligibility, all projects and programs have to take place in Orange County for the benefit of Orange County residents. So, you can be an artist living in Durham and doing a program in Orange County and be eligible for funding. However, if you're a Durham-based nonprofit, you need to apply to the Grassroots program in Durham County. So like I said at the beginning, every county has Grassroots money. And, the state frowns upon organizations going beyond their home county to kind of dip into the Grassroots funding of another. And, our funding is much, much smaller than Durham's and Wake's. So if you're a Orange County based organization, you're much better served if you apply through those counties too, because they have more money and their grants are larger. So I'll talk more about that in a minute too. Again, timeline, July 1 through June 30. You have to be a nonprofit organization. Unincorporated groups, which are typically artists, we encourage you to go through the Artist Project Grant instead of Grassroots. It's just a better fit. And it's also it's a less complicated application. With Grassroots, we're asking for financials. We're asking for board lists. We're asking for all the usual things that you have to upload for a nonprofit grant. With the artist project grant, we don't require any of that. So if you're an unincorporated group, you're not going to have any of that. So it's just a better fit. Public and private schools in Orange County are eligible to apply. Parent-teacher organizations for either school system. We've made some changes with that too, which I'll get to. And then also county government also can apply. So again, if you're an organization serving multiple counties, please apply to the county in which you are physically located. Organizations have to have been in operation for 1 year. If you have an operating budget over $2 million, you can apply for programmatic support, but not operations. That is simply because we have limited funding. We want to prioritize the smaller organizations when it comes to operations so that they can hopefully grow to the point that they can't apply for operations support anymore. So we, do ask that you only apply for programmatic support. Recipients of Arts Council funding or other funding through the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, which is the overarching department that houses the Arts Council. If you are getting funding, you cannot receive state funding. But it's a little complicated. That's why I have Talk to Me on here, because if we have that $30,000 from Orange County, then we have $30,000 that could go to arts organizations that are getting state money, because it's not state money, it's county money. But if that $30,000 gets taken away and you are a recipient of Arts Council money, you're not going to be able to get funding through us. And so I'm not going to know that for certain until June 16th. I hate for anybody, with everyone's limited bandwidth and capacity, I hate for you to apply for a grant that you're not eligible for. So my recommendation is, if you're in this category, wait until the 16th. Make sure that the county budget passes as proposed, and then you can reach out to me and I will know how it all shook out. And then you've still got a little bit of time to get your application in before it closes on the 30th. This also is similar with UNC. So UNC obviously is funded by the state. We don't want to double dip state funding for a state organization. But if you are with, Playmakers and you have a community outreach program that is not funded by the state at all, then you could come to us for grant support. It cannot be funded by state money. So the grants will fund program expenses. I emphasize artist fees because that is hands down the most supported ask by our panels. These grants are really all about paying artists. That's not to say that you can't use it for other expenses, but artists are the one thing that I see is just not argued. If you're applying for marketing support, everybody has an opinion about marketing. Well, why are they running a print ad, or why are they just using social media? Everybody's got an opinion, and there's no right or wrong, but everybody has an opinion. And if they don't agree with your approach, they might not score your application well. Whereas nobody can argue with an application that wants to pay artists. So that's always your safest bet. And especially if you're paying artists of color, which I'll get into in a minute, we do have a set amount every year that has to go to hiring multicultural artists. And so if your application is asking for money to hire artists and they're multicultural artists, you're going to jump to the top of that list. And then also operating expenses. This is only for arts nonprofits. We cannot fund, organizations that do not have an arts-based mission. But it really truly means operating expenses, light bill, rent, whatever. For complicated reasons that have to do with this multicultural spending requirement that the state passes down to us, the pool of funds that we have for operating is pretty low. And that, unfortunately, is because we have hardly any arts organizations in Orange County that are led by and serving communities of color. So because of that, we have to focus that multicultural requirement on programs. So a program ask is generally going to be safer than operating because we have more funding available. So keep that in mind too. But, ask for what you need. Some things that the grants cannot fund. One big one to point out is scholarships. Scholarships are just very subjective based on the organization. They're hard to quantify. What we recommend instead is use our grant to pay the hard cost, like teacher salary for a camp, so that you can offer more scholarships. Art, music, dance therapists. I want to specify with this too. Art therapy is a medically licensed profession. We are not qualified to evaluate a medically licensed practitioner. We're qualified to evaluate arts programs. And so that's why art therapists are not allowed to be funded through this program. However, artists conducting programs, in a hospital or in some kind of therapeutic environment, that is allowed. So it's really about what is being provided. If it is art therapy, that I don't mean to do this in a way, I just mean literally, like if it is art therapy under an art therapist license, we cannot fund that. But if it is an art activity in a medical setting, hospital, we can. Cannot fund fundraisers. Food and beverages, we cannot fund. Internal school things like supplies, band equipment, we cannot fund that. We can fund things like artists in residencies and, assemblies, groups to come in for performances in the schools, things like that. Oral history and history projects, kind of the same as art therapy. Those really fall more under the humanities realm. And there's, a whole set of criteria that has to be followed when you're doing a project like that is beyond the scope of what we do. However, we can fund, a photographer or a videographer. So we can fund the people that are involved in the project. We just can't fund the overarching project itself. And then, of course, we can't fund interest. Guidelines, artistic merit is the most important factor. So please remember that. You might not know yet what artists your organization's bringing in next year, and that is fine. So what you need to do is show the artists that you have been bringing in over the past years, so that the panel can see that, you guys understand what artistic merit means, and that you've got this, good history of artists that you've worked with. One change for this year is the matching requirement. If you're a nonprofit organization, that one-to-one cash match is still required. So if you get $1,000 from us, you have to match it with $1,000. So that means, if you're asking for program support, that $1,000 needs to be matched within that program. If you're asking for operations support, it needs to be matched within other operational expenses. One thing that we have changed is the schools. And this really is with Orange County Public Schools in mind. Orange County Public Schools do not have arts-focused PTA groups. They have, they have PTA groups that are largely focused on, sports and band boosters. If everybody could mute. I'm getting some feedback. All right. If you are a PTA group with Chapel Hill Carver Schools and you are a well-funded PTA group, I still encourage you to match the grant. We haven't had Orange County schools apply in many, many years, and we want to change that. And so one of the barriers that, we've heard is this matching requirement. So that is why we've removed it in hopes that we will get more requests from the Orange County school system. The Chapel Hill Carrboro school system is much more resourced than Orange County. That school system has their own arts curriculum director. So, if it's coming from Chapel Hill Carrboro, we would still love to see that match. If it's coming from a PTA group in Chapel Hill Carrboro, it's going to help to see a match. But it is not required anymore. Encouraged, but not required. Proof of partnerships and community support are really important. My rule is if you mention another organization in your application, provide a letter of support. If you are hosting a program at the Arts Center in Carrboro, get their director to provide a letter of support saying that, yes, we're hosting them and we're excited about it. Artists too, if you're, wanting to bring in Jackie Shelton Green for a program at your school, get Jackie to write up a letter of support. They really do help. And it also shows the panel that, you're planning and you've already been putting wheels in motion and that you've, got people invested in your program. And then again, operation requests are only allowed from arts organizations. Can you hear me now? Thumbs up?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I don't know what happened there. Please be mindful of accessibility. All of our funded projects have to take place in accessible ADA approved locations. Everybody has to be able to get into the place where the program is happening. So please remember that. There's so many accessibility resources out there now. There are, free resources to provide audio descriptions for people with low vision. If you are a, performing-based organization, consider closed captioning for people with low hearing. Sensory-friendly performances are a wonderful option for the neurodiverse population. I realize that is a whole other level of capacity that a lot of organizations might not have at this point, but it's something to strive for, certainly. And then, even just simple things like if you're having a program where name badges are used, can, include pronouns. Pronouns are really important and it's how people identify. So just simple things like that show people that, you see them and you want them to be reflected in the way that they see themselves. It's just so weird. Every time I hit my space button, it's muting me. So if I start talking and y'all can't hear me, somebody shout out. Okay, so funding priorities have not changed. First priority is still arts organizations. Second priority is arts and education. I want to point out, if you are an organization that is an arts organization and does arts and education, like I think about, North Carolina Arts in Action, which they're in Durham, but, they are an arts organization and their whole organization is about getting dance in schools. Sometimes in the past they would apply through arts education, but really they should apply as an arts organization because that's the first funding priority. And this goes into your overall score. So if you can, fit into multiple categories, choose the category in the grant application that is of highest priority, which is going to be arts organizations. And then the third priority is our, municipalities or organizations that are not arts that are doing arts programming. So something like Boomerang, we've funded them quite a few times in the past to do, murals with their students. They're not an arts organization, but they're doing arts programming with, local artists. So how they are evaluated, we have a separate financial review panel. Another change that we've made this year, schools and PTA groups. Let me think about that actually. No, yeah. Schools and PTA groups do not have to submit financials anymore. I mean, it's just kind of silly, reviewing financials of a school. It doesn't really have much weight on the funding decision. So we have removed that requirement, but for everybody else, that is still very much a requirement. And we have a separate review panel that does look at 990s and all that good stuff. One thing I want to remind everybody, there's a space in the application that asks if you have a deficit or surplus to explain why. And it always surprises me how many people do have a deficit or surplus and don't explain why. And it's really important because there's so many different reasons why you could fall into either one of those categories. And most of the time it's a completely understandable reason. So just make sure to not skip over that, because especially if your organization is in a significant deficit and there's not an explanation, the board is going to be hesitant to fund an organization in that situation. So it really is important. So we have separate review panels for the visual, literary, and performing arts. They are made up of our advisory board members based on their areas of expertise. And then we also bring in guest artists. Usually it's prior grant recipients that are not applying this year. We do that both to have outside input, but also for transparency. Our process is very transparent and, nothing is shady and, taken place in a closed door. So, we want outside people to be able to be involved in the process. The funding decisions are based on the quality of the grant and not the panelist knowledge of the organization. And that's tricky. We're in a small community. Everybody knows everybody. But the reason I say that is to encourage you to write your grant application as if nobody knows who you are. You are a brand spanking new organization and you have to tell your story. I tell the panels every year, you have to judge by what is in the application, period, and not try to bring in, outside knowledge that you have, whether it's good, bad, whatever. So just don't, if you've been around forever, don't act like it. Apply as if you're brand new. So each panel reviews the grant application. We have a very regimented process to do that during the panels. And each panelist scores the applications ahead of the panel conversation. Then we have a panel conversation. Panelists are given the opportunity to go back in and change their score, and that often happens after the conversation. And then we bring all the scores, or I bring all the scores to the full board in August, and then they decide how to slice and dice it. My role, I am not involved in the funding decision. I am the facilitator, and I do provide context when I feel like it's needed. So if I've had a one-on-one conversation with someone and I've got a little bit of backstory and I feel like that is not coming through, then I will offer that context. But I will never sway the panels one way or the other. That is not my job. So that's important to know. And that's also important to know because I could sit here and tell you that is a brilliant idea. You absolutely should apply, and then it not get funded. So just because I think it's wonderful, sometimes my board doesn't agree with me. So don't be mad at me if I encourage you to apply and then it ends up not working out. I do feel like I typically know, but every now and again, things don't work out the way I think they are. So, again, artistic merit, that's the most important piece of everything. Community impact is extremely important. The multicultural aspect, which I mentioned earlier, educational impact, if that's relevant to your program, your ability to plan and implement, that comes from how much detail is in your grant application. It also comes from, your financials. It's all tied together. And then, of course, your stability, your financial stability. For the schools, we also look at the integration into curriculum or enrichment, because sometimes it's one or the other. And then also need. We do factor in the free and reduced lunch percentage for the school. So the rubrics for nonprofits and municipalities, artistic merits 30%, community impact 25%, program management 15%. That financial review score is 10%. Where you fall on the priority of funding is 10%. And then compliance. Compliance is from the report that you have submitted for prior years. So for those of y'all that got a grant last year, your report is due, I think it's Monday, I think it's the 13th of July. We are looking at, did you do what you said you were going to do? Did you properly credit us and the State Arts Council? This is so important. And I'll talk more about it in a minute, but every year, I'm just surprised by how many people forget to put logos on things. And things like sending letters to our elected officials, all of that goes into compliance. And then for the schools, it's artistic merit, and then integration into the curriculum and enrichment, that's 40-40. And then the need is 20%. So if you get funded, you'll get a contract through DocuSign. You will be required to file a final report that'll be due in July of next year. And then again, when I file my report with the state, I have to upload all of your marketing materials that you submit to us in your final report. And I can only submit the materials that have properly credited the State Arts Council. So when you get a grant, you've got a cover sheet and it tells you where your funding's coming from. And if it says your funding's coming from the State Arts Council, you have to use both their logo and this credit line. It's both. It can be in teeny font at the bottom of your poster, but it has to be on there or I can't submit it with my report and you get docked in your compliance score. So, and if you're putting their logo on your stuff, put ours too, because we're proud of y'all. We want our logo on your materials. We want to say it's a program that's supported by us. And, it also kind of adds clout when you can have the State Arts Council's logo on your materials. It says you're endorsed by this state arts agency. So please use the logos. I will say we are getting ready to announce our new brand. We are getting ready to become Arts Orange. That is kind of one title that encompasses both of our arms. We are the county, and then we're also a nonprofit organization. We will have a new logo. So as soon as that is announced, I will get it updated on the grantee resources page on the website. So if it's not updated before you're doing your program, use the old one. But otherwise, if it's happening later, please use our new logo. It's really great. I'm excited. Letters to local legislators and commissioners. This has always been optional. It still is optional, but it is really strongly encouraged, especially right now. We have a new senator, Jonah Garson, who took Greg Meyer's place in the state Senate. We are not real sure what his position is when it comes to the arts. That was our big takeaway from Arts Day this year. It was the first time I've ever left Arts Day being in Orange County, wondering if we actually have the support of all of our legislators. So Jonah Garson needs to hear from our grantees. And if you're, sending a letter to Jonah Garson, send a letter to Alan Boansi and Renee Price too. And then also with our county commissioners, one thing I'm going to do is get a list of their addresses on that grantee resource page so that you can easily send them letters as well. Their addresses are in your report that is coming due in July, so that they're all listed there in the report application. The commissioners need to hear from you too, especially in light of these proposed cuts. They need to see that the arts are important, that they are changing lives. And so please just take a moment and send letters. And then also, help us out when we need you to show up, like for the check presentation. I love it when we can take over that county commissioner room with all of our arts people. And then when our little portion's done, the whole room empties out. I love that. So please, show up. One thing, we are going to be amping up our advocacy efforts in this upcoming year because of funding issues. One thing we're probably going to be doing is putting a call out to past grantees saying, hey, will you sign up to come speak during the public comments at a county commissioner meeting about your grant and, what it did for you as an artist or what it did for the kids at your school. We need to go to them and make them aware of the impact that the arts has in this community. So we appreciate in advance your willingness to take time and show up for the arts. So some FAQs, funding priorities for this coming year. Again, programs, especially those hiring multicultural artists. Operations funding will be limited. Not to say it's not there, but it's just very limited. So if you can choose one or the other, I would choose programs. Again, if you're receiving state funding or you've applied for state funding and you're waiting to hear, I would wait until June 16th. And then as long as we've got that $30,000 coming from the county, then that's a little bit of money that we can grant organizations that are getting funded through the state. if that funding gets scrapped, then I don't want you to waste your time applying. So check in with me on the 16th and I will know for sure. Again, the limit is 5,000, whether you're asking for programs or operations. If you have multiple ideas, submit multiple applications. Just for clarity, it gets too muddied if you try to combine everything into one application. So please separate them, be as clear as possible. Matching funds. So this is important. You can use in-kind donations for that matching requirement. So if you've got a program and, you know, a local theater is going to donate you the space to do your program, the value of that space donation can go towards your match. It does not have to be a cash match. It can be in kind. However, the big exception to that is artist time. And we all know artists who are willing to donate their time, but we don't want that. We want to pay artists. And even an artist that's willing to donate their time, pay them anyway and say, well, then donate what we're paying you to an artist who's out there trying to hustle and make a living doing this. There are artists in our community that, you know, are in a fortunate position that don't have to be paid for their art, but they are the minority. And when they agree to be used without pay, it's doing a disservice to the rest of the artists in the community who are trying to make a living by being an artist. So pay them no matter what. And if they don't want the money, tell them to donate it to an artist who's a working artist in need of income. So when you're applying for a program grant, you have to fill out a program budget. That's always the trickiest part. And one of the things that trips people up is that it has to be a zero-based budget. So your revenue has to equal your expenses. But it's important because we can't fund fundraisers. So if your program is, you know, is budgeted to generate revenue, it's ineligible. On the other hand, if your program is budgeted to lose money, that's just not a good idea. So, you know, you don't want to plan a program that's going to lose money, and you don't want to, and then the board obviously doesn't want to fund a program that's going to lose money. So it's very important that for the program requests, your budget's net zero. This is not the case with operations requests. We do not expect your organization's financials to net zero every year. Like, that's pretty much impossible. And actually, I'm a little suspect if it does. So it is only for program requests. Main tips, again, just remember that quality is everything. Artistic merit, be clear and concise. If you can answer, you know, we allow 500 words, but you can clearly answer a question in 200, yay. Like, do not feel like you got to fill up a field just because that's the, you know, maximum amount allowed. That is the maximum amount allowed, just to, you know, kind of force people to be concise. But if you can do it in less than that, then more power to you. Third, try new things. You know, this more is for organizations. Like, we can totally fund the same program year to year, and that happens often. But just make sure that it's continuing to evolve and that you're continuing to evaluate what's working and what's not, and include that in your grant application so that the panel sees it and isn't like, oh, well, here's this thing again. You know, they can see, okay, you know, they're adding a new thing this year, or they're, you know, changing it up a little bit. This obviously does not apply to the schools. Maybe that's not obvious, but, you know, schools bringing in the same artist every year it's a new group of kids every year. So it doesn't really matter. You know, we want to spread the love to the teaching artist community and, you know, pay all those people that are on our teaching artist rosters. But, you know, there's some of the people that are just kind of those folks that is what they do. They perform in the schools every year. And, you know, the fourth grade class this year is not the fourth grade class next year. So this really applies more to our organizations. And then, you know, any asks that can focus on the identified needs of our community are great. Those major needs continue to be space. We have very little space for the arts. So if you know, happen to be in a magical situation where you've got space available that you can provide to the arts community, that is a highly fundable request. And then, of course, equitable access, you know, programs that are providing arts experiences for free. That's super important. So the multicultural role, again, you know, it takes a big old chunk of our funding to meet that requirement. So it is important to hire non-white artists. And it is important to remember it's about who is being hired. It's not about the population being served. It is the people that you are hiring with the grant money. The population being served is important too. That's something that we'll ask on the report. But for this purpose, it's all about who you are hiring with the grant dollars. Again, you know, you can apply for operations and programs. If you've got the capacity to do it, why not? And it just depends on the funding or the funding and the applicant pool. If we get a ton of applications, I do typically see the board say, well, let's fund them this one, but not this one, so that we can spread the love a little bit more. But if the funding pool is lower and you've submitted 2 stellar applications, then you very well may get 2 grants. So, you know, I really just encourage you to base it on your bandwidth. Organization race, this is something that is weird. It is a required question from the state arts council that they have to report to the federal government. It doesn't have anything to do with the decision, with the funding decision, but it has to represent 50% of or more of your staff, board, or membership, if you have a membership. There are very few organizations in Orange County that can answer non-white to this question, especially in the arts. So because of what that means is your leadership has to be a person of color, the majority of your staff, the majority of your board. So the state only gives us these, like, you know, Black, Native American, Asian. I've added in this year other, you know, for biracial individuals and communities. It's not something the state gives us as an option, but it's just weird to me. So I've just added it in anyway, because I don't know. It feels weird trying to force people into one box when many people are many boxes. If you need help finding high quality artists, we've got lots of resources. I encourage you to work with the Arts Center in Carborough, because they are in our community. They are working with our local artists in the community. They have an arts and education program and can help you get incredible artists into your school or into your organization. There's also, of course, the Durham Arts Council's CAPS program, and then United Arts in Raleigh. They have artists in schools. It's really largely the same roster of teaching artists that's involved in all of these. So I encourage you to go through the Art Center since they are our local organization providing this service. I've already touched on this. Zero-based budget does not apply to your organization's financials. It's just about that programming budget in the application. I've already talked about this too. We cannot allow funding for scholarships. Instead, ask for funding for hard costs so that your program can allow more scholarships. And then lastly, the due date is Tuesday, June 30th, 11:59 p.m. It is through Submittable again. You will go to our website. You can either do the drop down and go straight over here to the grant you're wanting to apply for, or you can go to the grants page. And they're linked here as well. All the guidelines, the submit button is down at the bottom. If you've never used Submittable before, you'll need to set up a username and password. If you lose that password, I can't help you. We don't have anything to do with the users in Submittable. We only can see applications. So make sure that you save that. And, you know, it's a pretty self-explanatory application. I feel like most people at this point have used Submittable. But if you get hung up and you need any help, then just reach out to me. My information is right there. And I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to open it up for questions. None? Wow, I answered all your questions.
Hey, Katie, it's Bridget.
Hey, Bridget.
I signed on a little late, so you probably answered this, but I know historically you guys don't fund art therapy. I've been leaning heavily into a concept of art wellness, where me being an art therapist informs the work, but it's not actual therapy. Is that something you guys would consider?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
And
just we can't fund anything under, you know, a licensed art therapist, an art therapist licensed practice, because we're not qualified to evaluate, but we can certainly fund programs that are not under that therapy heading, or, you know, artists in medical settings, things like that.
so you couldn't fund artists in medical settings. That's what you're saying. Well, so I
No,
have
we
this idea, and I
can.
haven't been able to. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Like if we have an artist that wants to go in and do art making with, you know, a, you know, children's cancer hospital, we can totally do that. But if it's falling under the license of an art therapist, we can't. So what you're talking about, I believe, would be fundable.
Okay, okay. And I know that this probably would not apply to like multicultural, but I'm just wondering if it would be helpful to put in the app. I'm trying to get in touch with the hospital school. I grew up with a chronic illness. I've had cancer, so like that really informs my work with that population. But that wouldn't really apply to the multicultural aspect of the application. It's just an ability thing.
Yeah.
Do you think it's worth mentioning in the application if there's a space, or not really?
That you would be working with cancer patients?
That I have life experience with chronic illness and cancer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really relevant.
Okay.
I mean, it's your why, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's what got me into the field. So
yeah, I think that's really relevant, and I think that's good context and explains why you do what you do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry I was late.
That's okay. Any other questions? All right, well, artist project grant is at 6 tonight, so some of y'all might fall into that category as well. So I hope to see you then, and if not, just let me know if you have questions. I will say, things are insane right now for us. We're moving back into the Eno Mill after our flood last July. Summer camp is starting Monday. My time is super, super limited. So if I get a lot of requests, I'm gonna have to probably pick and choose, our new folks over repeat applicants. But I will do my best to help you out. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Katie.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie.